everything always comes back to providing value and building relationships. And what tools do you have to do that?
All right, y'all. You know what day it is.
It is Workshop Wednesday.
Let's go.
Well, Michelle and I have been talking about investors and how this time of year is a really good time, at least here anyways. We see a lot of investors wanting to either buy more property or sell more property during this fourth quarter, whether they need to go spend some money to offset some taxes or sell some things to pay some taxes. We just see a lot of activity in that demographic. So what are different ways that you can go if you don't have investors that you're working with now? How do you even find them? Like, where do you go? What do you do to find the real estate investors? So I'm gonna let Michelle kick us off first.
Yeah, so we were talking about this, and there's really a couple different reasons you would want to target investors. To get the listing itself, for investors that are tired and maybe ready to get out of the game, to get an investor buyer, or to potentially get some first-time home buyers for the tenants that are in those properties. So we're going to kind of tackle it today from that perspective of the three angles. One of the ways that we've talked about previously in terms of generating new business with investors is to tackle those for rent by owners. So going to places like Zillow, apartments.com, and just seeing, you can tell when someone is an individual listing it versus a company. And the goal here is to tackle the ones that aren't property management companies, the individual that is renting it out. And the thought behind this is to call them and just get in touch with them and see what their perspective is. How are things going? Are they, getting a feel for if you think they're going to get that vacancy filled, and then talking to them about the market and how you can pivot them. Maybe it's a property they still want to be a landlord, but it's just that property itself isn't what they need. Maybe, it's a single family and they'd rather get more into multifamily, or it's a multifamily and they'd rather get into apartment complexes. Like, there's a wide variety of steps up that investors make. And so just really getting an understanding from them of, how it's going first. And then if you've got an investor that is, maybe showing some signs of weariness, then talking to them about, trying to convert them into a seller, seeing if that might be the right option for them. And there's a couple ways, like I mentioned, Zillow and apartments.com. Those are great ways to find the for rent by owners. But if you're also looking for just landlords in general, you can do some non-owner occupied searches. So Audra and I were talking about this. I'm going to venture to guess it's a little bit different per area of the nation, but like here in Iowa, we have assessors pages where you can do some searches, and you'll see the mailing address and the physical address will be different addresses. That's a good indicator that they are it's non-owner occupied. And then another resource you could use is like RedX, Vulcan 7, Land Voice. There's all kinds of data sources that can help you pull in those for rent by owners and non-owner occupied properties as well. So that's high level, kind of a good way to drum up the business, or really tap into those landlords that might be needing to get out of the situation that they're in.
So I was telling Michelle, I've never used like Vulcan 7 or RedX, but we always kind of went about it the backwards way, using the MLS and our local county assessor's page. So looking up the address, looking to see if it does have that different, or if it's a different mailing address, or if it's listed with an LLC, you can look up the LLC contact name and reach out to them and see, are they wanting to sell anything? Are they looking to buy anything? Have those questions. And then also, you never know one extra thing you can do whenever you get the address is we use truepeoplesearch.com or freepeoplesearch.com. That's a great way to get the tenant's information. You can put that address in there and get the tenant. So yes, you want to talk to the landlords about potentially picking up their business as a buyer or seller, But also you, especially right now, towards the end of the year, when you have a lot of people that are looking to move because leases are about to expire, pick up those tenants as new buyer clients. Have you ever thought about even attempting to see if they can get pre-approved? A lot of people don't understand the approval process, and that one, it doesn't hurt your credit. You can have up to four, apply up to four before it touches your credit. And there's so many programs for down payment assistance and first time buyers and all kinds of different credits. A lot of people think, oh, I could never ever get approved for a home. But then they try and it's like, oh, I can really go get a house that's mine and stop paying my landlord's mortgage. So using the assessor's page, True People Search, those are ways that you can do it without having to pay for the extra services. Now, it does take a lot more time. So using the things like Vulcan or RedX that just pulls that in for you is a big time savings. But there's multiple ways there that you can go about reaching out to them and picking up more clients.
Yeah, and one of the things to think about too, as you're doing this, we've talked about tackling the landlord that maybe needs to sell, the tenant that maybe needs to buy, but these can be a great opportunity for you as well if you are interested in purchasing investment properties yourself. Having these conversations with people, not just, I mean, the non-owner occupied is going to lead you to people that aren't landlords either. It might just be vacant properties. Maybe they inherited something from a family member, they're not living there, whatever. But those are all going to be opportunities too for you to maybe jump into something, whether it's, already got a rental certificate on it and ready to go, or a potential vacant property that you could get a good deal on. And one of the things for those of you that are with EXP, that is a huge plus, is we can get certified through Express Offers, which is a platform that basically it gives you the option to offer to potential sellers, like, hey, you could list for this price, or I can get you an immediate cash offer from a pool of cash buyers. So I would recommend, if you guys are going to build a portfolio of investors, that you go through that certification class, because having that in your pocket and being able to talk to these investors about, hey, do you want to buy and sell? Hey, by the way, I have this I have this certification that I've gotten, and I have the potential to run, saying this really bad, but I'm going to end up running into people that just need a quick offer, and I can add you to my list of people to, hey, they're willing to sell for this price. Would you want to submit an offer?
That's really good. Always, investors really like the off-market deals, the secret lists, right? So building up an email list of any of those people, like, hey, I come across off-market properties a lot. And one of the ways you can do that is by calling around and finding those sellers. And just say, I'd love to just add you to this list. And as I come across them, I can send it over to you. That's an excellent way to build more connections with more investors. And that's something you can put out on social media, or if you do an email newsletter, like, hey, I have this investor list. If you want me to add you to it, whenever I come across any good deals, any off-market properties, I can shoot that over to you. Look at
Matt
Matt
has raised his
all
hand.
raising
He's
his
like,
hand.
girls, I have something to contribute.
I wanted to be appropriate and raise my hand. I didn't want to just speak out. Using a product like Express Offers is one of the most effective ways of getting in front of and into relationships with for sale by owners. And the way that I use the relationship with Express Offers when I call for sale by owners, I simply ask them, hey, I see that your property is still for sale by owner. You're still selling for sale by owner. Are you by chance open to working with agents who have buyers? And also, I work with a select team of investors, and for the right properties, they are paying at or above market value. Would you be open to an offer from them? And they go, huh? What's that? Oh, I'm not a rental, and I don't want low balls. I said, I get that. And here's the thing, without seeing your property, I don't know what they're going to send. Worst case scenarios, you get an offer that's absolutely ridiculous. Best case scenario is you get an offer that's ridiculous. However, if you had 3 or 4 people looking at your property that said that they were kind of interested, but they've been ghosting you, you can say, hey, we just received an offer. Are you still interested? You don't have to tell them the offer's poo-poo. You just have one in your pocket now as a seller. Would that be of value to you? And now they're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. That would make sense. Yeah, listen, and you're not going to hurt if the offer's ridiculous and it really makes you mad. It's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. They're investors, right? They look at numbers. They don't look at houses. So is 4 o'clock today or 5:15 better for me to swing by? And you're in. Then you're in. That's it.
That's it.
That's all I wanted to share.
Easy peasy. I think whether it is investors or your database or anything else, everything always comes back to providing value and building relationships. And what tools do you have to do that? Whether it is, using that's a huge piece of value that you can offer to someone, especially if they've been sitting there for a long time and don't have anything. Man, I can throw this out there to all these investors. Would you be interested in an offer?
Can I submit you an offer? It'll be a cash offer.
Exactly. That's big value and a great way to start building that relationship. Maybe it doesn't work out, but you're going to hopefully keep in touch with them and continue to build that relationship. So then the next time they have a property that they need to buy or sell, or another investment they need to pick up, because you're the one that has continuously been offering value and reaching out and keeping in touch with them, you're going to be the person that they want to talk to.
You guys ever see like the movies or the TV shows where they have like it's so funny. I don't my mind works really interesting. Like where they have like the map with the serial killer and all the faces and like threads going back and forth between. So like when you're working with investors and investor properties and investor buyers, you're going to need to create an investor buyer pool and have it on a board. And you have to find out exactly what's their buy box, right? What types of properties, what part of town, beds, baths, singles, small multis, etc., right? And then coordinate and organize your buyer list with that. So every time you're reaching out to a property, you're looking and saying, well, I've got 5 investors that your property kind of fits their criteria. Can I come by and take a look before, etc. And so every time you're making a call or reaching out to anybody, you've got now a list of like, well, I'm working with 15 or 9 or 6 or 4 really active, very strong, actually go to closing type of buyers, and your house kind of fits their criteria. Can I take a look at it? If it's not a good fit for them, would you still want to sell? I can show you some alternatives and ways, and worst case scenario, we get you more money. So the whole idea around this is it's at first you're going to be just collecting data, building lists, building relationships, and then you're going to start getting really good at just connecting. And that's all we do. Like I'm just a connector of people and properties, opportunities and legacies. That's what I do. I connect. We get paid to connect. Draw the red lines, find out who the serial killer is, and go from there.
Yeah, I think most investors aren't usually coming to you saying, I need to find a house within this time frame. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some, we got 1031 exchange time frames, people need to find something, but I would say the majority of investors that I work with are bring me a deal and we'll buy it. They buy deals. They don't go searching for houses, if that makes sense. And so I think that that's kind of having a bunch of investment properties in your pocket and a pool of investors to present them to. The other thing too, with the way that the NAR settlement has shaken things up and requires us to get those buyer broker agreements ahead of time, I think investors I have found have been the easiest to get those agreements from, because they want to find a property and they want you to find them an off-market property. Well, of course, they're going to be willing to pay you a commission if you find an off-market property, because it's going to be a deal for them and they don't mind paying that commission. It's still a deal with your commission on top of it. And so I think, and they're a very loyal community where if you can find them and help them reach their goals, they're going to continue to use you as well. So I think that's actually a really good pool of people to tap into if you're, really wanting someone that's going to be loyal and willing to sign a buyer broker agreement. That's a great pool of people that typically don't have any problem with that.
Yeah. How many of you, either even if you don't own any properties now, but have been a real estate investor, whether it's a flip or had rentals, how many of you have done it so far? Okay. So the rest of you that have you thought about it or adding, like, is that something that you want to add to this is a good way to start that. Even if you're not quite ready to do it, going around calling, finding the properties, and then you starting to run the numbers on it and analyzing it. It's a great way for you to just, this is how I started. When I first did our very first flip, I would, any property that I came across that I was going to send out to investors, I was also going to look at it from a perspective of like, well, what would it look like if I did buy this? And start running those numbers. So then you get really good at walking into a property, looking around, knowing what it needs to sell for, how much you need to put into it, just by walking through it. But even if you're not ready to be the buyer, just use this as a way to start educating yourself and practicing and getting to where you're comfortable with the number. So then that way you can start building your own buy box and know. So then whenever you're coming across these properties, you look at it and you're like, okay, this checks all of my boxes for mine. Could I possibly do that? And then start connecting with a lender to go about that process.
And one of my first rental properties I purchased was a client that was a buyer of mine, but her property was exactly what I was looking for. And so I just threw out an offer. Now you have to be careful, the broker and me, it's like, be very careful. You have to show them what true market value is. So in this case, she needed a couple things done. She'd had water in the basement, some other things. And so I was like, this is market value, but these are the things you'd need to do. This is what we would pay you if we were to purchase the property directly. And she didn't want to do the things, and it made sense for her to give it to us, not give it to us, sell it to us. I wish it had given to us, but you know, there's always that option too, as you're going into listings, if they need some work and people don't want to put the work into it, with that big, strong caveat, you have to show them the two differences. They have to understand their options. But that can be another great way to get investment properties, is just the ones you're already working with them as buyers and they've got something to sell.
Every one of ours, whether it was a flip or a rental, every one of them was off market, and that we just found by calling around. And I don't know how many it's been now, quite a bit, but they've all been from just making those calls, looking for investors. And then when the property checks our boxes, like, oh, well, maybe we should jump on this. What about you, Matt? What does your investment stuff looks like? How have you found yours?
How I found my properties? Honestly, I found my deals on the MLS, and I would set up certain search criteria that I would create based off of what I consider to be average value for a certain neighborhood or zip code. And then I would create a filter for listings that had a ceiling of a certain dollar amount below the average list price, that had a certain type of ownership, whether it was investor, REO, estate, etc. So I was filtering out some properties based on a few key criteria by understanding what my buy box was. Then I ran every property through my rental analysis spreadsheet to make sure that the numbers worked just even on the surface before I looked at it. And so then I would look at and mock up like 3 to 5 worst case scenarios if my numbers were off by 20%. So if your numbers are off by 20% in one area, it's still a deal. If it's off by more than 20% in more than one area, then you got a problem. But you can be off by 5% in all 5 areas and still have a deal. So like in my mind, I had already set up worst case scenarios through the math. I set up my search ahead of time. So my system was such that like when a property would come up, it was really quick for me to be able to red light, green light something before even going out there and spending my day looking at it. So as an investor, that was my criteria. So then having that work out the several times that we did it pretty well, I'm able to then pass that same type of value to my investors. And so a lot of people have it's actually fascinating. Just because people have money doesn't mean they know anything about money, right? You've got doctors, optometrists, you got people that have so much money that they buy really bad deals because they can mitigate losses through their own cash flow, right? So they don't actually like scrutinize a deal as well as an investor that like doesn't have any extra cash flow, or like being over budget on your flips gonna suck, right? Like my neighbor's like, oh, well, we're 30,000 over. That's okay. Just pay. And like in 15 years, we'll make it back. Like some people don't have that. So a $30,000 oops can tank an investor at the very beginning of their career. So I'm able to provide that level of like clarity. And that for some people is like more than they've ever experienced anywhere else. So, and it's just a couple very simple benchmarks that I had put in place to get emotion and fear out of it. Because I remember the first deal that I took on, it was such a deal and it was on the MLS and it had been on for a minute. I got scared. I'm like, why is this still available? Why do I see it? What the hell? There must be a portal to hell somewhere that other people know about. How is this available? Why is the number so good? Well, then I found out every roach in Johnson County lived there. So after that was taken care of, it was a pretty good deal.
I think you bring up a good point though, just in talking to this. So like you were speaking about your investor mindset, but as we work with our investors, it's really important to ask them what their strategy is, because every investor has a different strategy. Some investors don't care about making anything monthly. They care about the equity gains. Some investors follow the 1% rule. Like you essentially, your rent needs to equal 1% of your cost plus all your expenses. So there's all kinds of different methodologies that people use. My dad has one too that he would follow that was just a certain amount of, like, if I invest and I finance this for 10 years, I need to make X dollars. So figure out what the payment is and then, make sure that you can get X number of dollars above that. So I think every investor has a different methodology. So that's a really good question to ask them, is what is your strategy for investing? Are you in it for the short-term monthly revenue? Are you in it for the long-term equity gains, or a little bit of both?
Yeah. Ask a lot of questions.
Don't forget the tax benefits.
And that.
Yeah, depreciation, being able to minimize active income, right? And to hedge against active income. So there's that as well.
Yeah, one of our good top producers says he can't afford not to buy investment properties every year because he needs to offset that, real estate income that he has coming in.
Yep. Bless you.
Cool.
Straight up 9:30.
Straight up.
Straight up 9:30. So that's all we got.
Cool. All right, y'all. Now go build out your list. Go make some calls. Go get certified with express offers. Go make some calls. Go get your list. Go start getting some red thread.
Make your serial killer board.
Make a serial
Go vote.
Make the seller. And yes, and that.
And what? And go vote. Yeah, go vote.
And go vote.
All right, y'all. Bye.